It really works. In my life, it works for people I see. But you know what's interesting about this program? We always, because of the way the society was and the way we were brought up, we want to use our intellect, try to figure it out. So I see people 10, 20, 30 years miserable. I was miserable in this program until I picked these steps up and then told you. And then, it's one thing people sometimes say to me, I went through these steps 5 times, but they may have gone through it up here. But did they go through it in the heart? The longest distance is between the head and the heart. Until we have that understanding and just the simplicity of letting go and surrendering, step 3 says to give our will and our lives over to care of God. On page 63, I started to read the 3rd step prayer, but the first line of the 3rd step prayer says it all anyway. Step 1 says it all, that we're powerless. So when we go into this thinking, this transformation, this new way of thinking, then again, the food just goes away. I just enjoy God's given food from God's earth. Again, I always bring up that I have lists here of all the ingredients. You pick it up in the supermarket, there's like 50 ingredients. If you want to know what I do, it's 1 ingredient. That's food I eat, has 1 ingredient, all natural, all healthy. And again, we got to remember all the disease and the upset that comes from our addiction to food. But how about people? How depressed and miserable we are. Again, our depression and misery comes from our relationship to people. Because it says in our book, it really nails it all in here. It says resentment is the number 1 upset and killer of us addicted people who need a 12-step program. And then I say we need a 12-step program, but how many people, since I had the spiritual awakening, how many people that I saw, quote, thought were normal, I see them running around thinking these little plans and designs and getting upset about this and that. And you know what? It's like the 90-pound weakling. They always talk about the guy who was as a kid was really skinny and everything, didn't have any muscles, and he was so upset he worked out his whole life and became Mr. America. We could practice, and through this book and through these steps, is spiritual muscle. Every day we work at just getting that higher consciousness and getting out of the self and realizing where the problem is. And after a while, we have that spiritual awakening and things just change around us. It talks about in his book throughout that spiritual transformation, that change. And it says in here on page 25, the great fact is in the 3rd paragraph, is just this, nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life. So that was a topic I said, the world is in our mind. Has revolutionized, it doesn't say the world changed, it says me and my attitudes. This is in 4:17, it talks about the acceptance prayer. The last sentence says, it's not so much in the world what needs to be changed, but me and my attitudes. So can you imagine, you change your attitude right now, you could win. Like if I said to you, you won $1 million in the lottery right now, somebody called you up and said that, you could be just as happy. Believe me, if you just get centered and realize that it's in the mind. Knowing that the problem is in our thinking makes us realize that really the things really aren't true and they're very false. When we try to figure everything out and when we get angry, it's based on a false emotion because it has to do with our crazy thinking. Our crazy thinking tells us we have to be angry at somebody, but there's no basis for that because what does it matter? Again, we have what's called the sick man prayer on 66 and 67, So again, it's so related to what people say and think, I'll go to that right now. And again, this is all related to our addictions and everything else in life. But on page 66 it says, but I'm going to read right before it goes, this is what I've been talking about. If you go to page 66 and you go to the last paragraph and the 2nd sentence in, it says, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. Wow. I mean, that's what our lives were like. Everybody dominated us. They'd look at us the wrong way. We were dominated by them. They'd say something to us. And God forbid they would yell at us or act negatively towards us. But here it's telling us a solution to that problem. It says, in the state of wrongdoing of others, people do us wrong, we think, because it says fancy or real. 95% of the time, somebody would say something to me, and they just meant it to be nice and funny. I would interpret it that they were trying to, do something to me or say something negative. That was the way my mind was thinking. They have a saying, I was so paranoid when a person walked in front of me, I thought they were following me. Had the power to actually kill. So, it's true. How many people kill themselves over their relationships? How many people are eating themselves to death over their relationships, drinking, taking drugs, right? But the other thing, and the other 95% of us are just darn miserable all day because we didn't know where the problem was. Here, it's going to, because resentment is the number one problem. When I read here, it's going to give us the answer. But how many times have we read this? You know, some people, I guess, haven't ever opened up this book. But the answer is here, and it says, but how could not wish them away any more than alcohol? So it says we couldn't wish them away. We couldn't do it. We were powerless. But it says here, we realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. So when I have a resentment towards somebody, I think I'm letting them have power over me. I say, how dare they do that? But if I look at them, it's going to tell us here like a sick person, like if I go to the hospital and there's somebody who has a broken leg and I look at them and I just have compassion, understanding, and love for them. But why do I do spiritually when somebody's acting a certain way? So it says, though we did not, on the page, top of page 67, though we did not like the way these symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. So I had to realize, and it says here, my sick thinking was reacting to sick people. You know, it's one thing for a sick person to say something negative to me or I find out they gossip about me, but how much more insanity is it for me to react to them? And why would I? My self-esteem comes from God-esteem. I talked before about self-esteem had the word self in it. But I can replace that with God-esteem. When I get that, and again, it says in this book, it was in every man, woman, and child. It was always there. The source is in here. We bury it. That's the whole defects of character, the pride and everything, leveling, you know, to get out of self, to let the power flow in, that power to come into our lives. So it says here, so it goes on to say, we ask God, that's our higher consciousness, as we understand him, help us show the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we cheerfully grant a sick friend. What a different perception change. Like I said, the world is in our minds. But when we have that transformation, when we look at people, and you know, sometimes somebody will be getting in my face, a boss at work, and I have a hard time. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'm trying not to laugh or have a smirk on my face. Because I say, this is a crazy person. You know, but also, they're coming from a point of view, and we have compassion and love. Maybe the boss feels nobody's listening to them, you know? So they got to assert themselves even more. So when I have the compassion, understanding, I could say to them and smile and say, yeah, okay, whatever you want, I'll do, and not react to, we don't want to kill the messenger, we want to get the message, right? So we're always killing the messenger, wanting to get even and this and that. So this is the whole key here. Okay, when a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man or woman. How can I be helpful to him or her? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. You know, in the third step prayer, it talks about thy will. Whose will did we use before? It says it there. I may better do thy will. But it keeps on saying that. Take away my difficulties. Again, I don't do it. And that victory over them may bear witness to those that with help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life, may I do thy will always. So when I'm miserable, when I'm irritable and discontent, whose will am I using? I'm not using thy will. But you know, again, I just want to emphasize, for me, this power was always in here. And people have difficulty when they come into the meeting, and I have certain beliefs, and we all do, and the more faith, a little bit of faith goes just a long way. But again, it's always that thing, we have that power is within us. It's around us and in everybody. It's that universal power. And a lot of philosophies, they talk about the energy in the universe, and other ones, they talk about this higher consciousness. But when we have love, tolerance, and patience comes from feeling the vibrations.